Raditz pointed up to the sky and motioned to Bando that was where they were going next. However, Bando didn't really get what was going on here. She was left completely nonplussed. I don't follow. Are we gonna space? Raditz looked a little put out by this confusion and had to elaborate a little bit more.
The lookout. We're going there, not space, silly. Don't you know about the time chamber? Aren't you supposed to have one?
Bando had to think a little here. Oh, that thing! I never really checked to see if it were still around. After Kami was slain when trying his best to help us as a last resort, he was really a brave old coot. We assumed that everything up there was gone too. We never really investigated it since we were, busy dealing with masochistic androids. We didn't really have the time.
Oh dear, then you're really going to need this training, huh?
Raditz motioned for Bando to follow him, and they flew up to the lookout. Not long after they arrived at said place, Kakarot joined them, and was pleased to see Bando again. Thanks for the heads up. We really cleaned up shop because of your tip-off. The future lass was still reeling from the sudden disappearance of the androids or anything to do with them, without them having to even really get stuck in. They had managed successfully and really easily to contain the majority of the chaos to Gero's lab up near North City and pretty much nowhere else. That being said though, the fact that her mission had been completed so quickly and that time didn't seem to be utterly ravaged by her presence here, yes, the time was right for her to drop the big reveal to her father and uncle, albeit her father temporally once removed. Now, as you can probably imagine from the time she's been in this story, she's quite the positive person and very confident in her demeanour, but now she looked rather tense and defensive, which was very unlike her. She crossed her arms and was trying her best to look Raditz in the eye, but was failing. There's something I need to tell you both. I haven't been completely honest with you about my identity. The brothers remain neutral in their stances. My real name isn't Bando. It's, well, you can probably guess. She grabbed her bandana and removed it from her head. Her flowing teal hair with black accents escaped the confines of the garment, and without her trusty headpiece, her timidity rose to greater levels. Raditz, though, remained steadfast.
Bulla, right?
Future Bulla nodded meekly. I'm sorry, Papa.
Because it could potentially muck up reality as we know it? Yes, I get you. And since you're revealing stuff, I may as well let you know that, I had a feeling this was the case for the longest time.
Future Bulla's eyes widened. Really? You knew?
Well, I wouldn't say knew exactly, but I had an inkling. Your father's a wily old fox. You see, my own Bulla has been expressing more and more to train with me specifically. Initially, of course, I rebuffed her advances, but she decided to, much like her old man, take matters into her own hands and train on her own. In those moments when I saw her do so, I could see flashes of you in her. The bravado, the easygoing nature, and not to mention the hair. Don't get me started on the hair, I mean, speaking from experience, that's when it all clicked for me.
Raditz walked up to his future daughter and patted her on the shoulder.
I said it to her, so I will say it to you. Couldn't be any more proud of you.
He rested his forehead on hers and she closed her eyes in comfort, relieved to have been accepted. Thank you. You have no idea how long I've dreaded this moment. Raditz pulled back.
Why dread it? We're about to do something really cool, right, Kakarot?
Well, yeah, you got it,
said Kakarot after keeping his distance during this reconciliation.
This time chamber here is pretty special.
Consider this a token of gratitude for you, giving us the heads up. Without you risking your reality and, maybe even time itself, ours might have gone up in smoke, or whatever androids admit. You know what I mean. Yes, you may lose a year of your life out here, but with this training, you could potentially save millions of years of those in your time. Isn't it worth it to try?
Bulla was floored. Her bottom lip was quivering, inspired by the speech from her father.
That was so deep, Papa. Yes, let's do it!
Kami greeted Future Bulla and thanked her for her services to their timeline. However, Kakarot remembered that the time chamber could only house originally 2 people at a time. Would they take turns? But Kami waved a finger.
Oh, I anticipated this, young Kakarot. I took the liberty, with the help of Mr. Popo, to upgrade the room's capabilities. Granted, these upgrades are small at this time, but It should mean that now 3 people can coexist inside with no discomfort or risk of collapse from the gateway. You're, I believe as the young ones like to say, good to go. You see, Bando? Kami's on it like vomit. I'd rather you refer to me with less, graphic descriptors, Raditz.
The 3 of them entered the chamber, with Bulla completely unprepared for the harsh reality of the interior. Raditz and Kakarot were used to this place. They had spent time here before. Yes, as you may recall, this time ended really awkwardly with Raditz getting Super Saiyan in not the best of circumstances, and it started a major rift between them, but this time, yeah, they were cool. Bulla couldn't get over, though, the heaviness of the air that she was breathing. Every single breath felt laborious. Everything felt denser than normal, even to the core of her own body. Granted, she had trained in a gravity chamber, the closest feeling she could recall, back when it was still functional before it became too energy intensive to operate in their apocalyptic climate, but this was a different kind of weight for her. And as she walked further away from the main residency of the chamber, the pressure only grew and grew. Raditz and Kakarot watched her casually walk further and further away, and were not worried in the slightest as to her condition. "So," said Kakarot calmly, "how far do you think she'll go before she chokes?"
If she and my daughter are basically the same person, I would say round about...
They could hear a retching in the distance. Now, a few minutes later, Bulla waddled back, completely drained and covered in sweat, but with a rather sadistic smile on her face.
You're right. It's not the first time, but don't worry. You'll get used to it. Eventually.
Bulla's smile didn't falter.
I can't explain it, but all this feels good. I've been through a lot.
She let out a large breath.
But this sensation is nothing like I've felt before. I like it.
The brothers stared at one another. That was not the response they expected. Be that as it may, Raditz smiled.
Good. Then we won't hold back then. We start tomorrow.
He cracked his knuckles, and after a very hearty lunch, Bulla wanted to actually get started earlier and attempted to walk as far as she could from the base again, desperate to beat her record on the first day. Meanwhile, back at Capsule Corp, Bulma was going through a massive quandary, as you might remember from the previous chapter. Down in her secure depository, she had 3 technologically advanced automatons, something that the world had never seen before. 2 of them derived from actual human beings, so maybe you could call them cyborgs, but semantics were really not her priority right now. And according to her future daughter, these creations were supposedly meant to be the downfall of humanity and could inflict savagery upon millions of innocent people. And yet, Bulma couldn't really place it. But she hadn't had the heart to tar them with the same brush as their future counterparts. She was left feeling torn. Does she let them out? But there's nobody strong enough around at the moment to protect her if they went rogue. Raditz and Kakarot were far away from here, having fun with Bando. Well, okay, maybe she just keeps them down there forever, never to be released. Well, to do that would be equally problematic. She knew that just them being down there would eat away at her forever, knowing that she was willingly holding 2 people captive in a pod in the bowels of Capsule Corp for the rest of the company's life, certainly her own. Could she live with herself? President Bulla tried to comfort her mother through this, offering to protect her.
I've been getting super strong lately, Mama. Check out these guns.
She flexed a little bit and posed for her mother to try and make her laugh, and kinda worked. It got her to chuckle softly.
I know, dear. I appreciate your gusto, but the last thing I want to be is responsible for humanity's downfall, starting what happened in the future, when it could easily be avoided.
Bulla sighed.
Mama, this isn't you. The woman I know and love wouldn't be scared of what-ifs. She'd go in with a scientific head, objectively skewed, and looked at this from a logical point of view. Just run some diagnostics beforehand and make your call then. You can reprogram them, yeah? Reprogramming them is tantamount to brainwashing them. Well, I don't want to do that either. This is going nowhere. Fine, I'm gonna go and do it myself. I know how to work the computers around here. Wait, no! You get back here, Missy!
Bulla rolled up her sleeves and stomped off down to the safe deposit vault, containing the pods which held androids 16 through 18. Bulma wasn't mad exactly at her daughter's defiance, nor disappointed. She was just, not ready for any of this. Back up on the lookout, in the chamber, it had been about 7 months or so. Bulla had relished her time here, For her, the air of this mystical room felt satisfying. She couldn't get enough of it, and this positive frame of mind was paying dividends for her gains. All three Saiyans had something to prove in here. Raditz wished to relive that power he had felt from being supercharged with Ki, thanks to Android 19's little handout. Kakarot wished to stand alongside his brother and also claim that power. And as for Future Bulla, well, I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? She wanted to save her future, and she could tell that right now, at this very moment in time. Even when they hadn't used up all of their time here, she probably could slaughter these droids with one arm tied behind her back. However, that wasn't enough. She wanted to really make those androids suffer, dominate proceedings, and thusly, she kept going. One evening, after giving a rather substantial dinner a good home, the trio felt that the time was right to go for it. With their minds cleared and their bellies full of energy-giving grub, they fought like they had never fought before in here. Raditz was not holding back, nor were his future daughter or his brother. Together, the trio went at each other's throats, like proper Saiyan warriors. There were no ill thoughts or desire to kill though, but the desire to fight with pride like a true Saiyan warrior was coursing through their veins. Their very souls even. Bulla and Kakarot rushed Raditz together and attempted to double team him, but the hairy hunk had other ideas. He held firm and held back their advances with every fiber of his being until he could give no more. In that moment, that same flicker of power he had felt in Gero's lab sputtered into life. This time though, he was ready. He didn't need no stinking android to give him a power jolt. Raditz figuratively grabbed the spark and dug himself in. He let out a roar, and the opposing duo could feel the air pulsate away from their comrade. Raditz's hair began to spark with blue electricity, the locks sharpening even more than regular Super Saiyan would. He was doing it. He was actually doing it! Raditz held on to the feelings of woe he had felt throughout his entire life. The years of wandering around Earth estranged from his brother, the loss of his parents, the desire to save his daughter's future. It was all enough to bring forth the Ascended Saiyan, Super Saiyan 2. With an almighty bang, Raditz's new power burst into existence. Kakarot and Bulla were doing their best to hold in place, barely able to see Raditz's new form from all of the dust being kicked up, not to mention the aura. But they could sense, though, that all of this had worked. They had done it. Seconds later, Raditz could no longer hold on to this form, and after looking down at this hand of his, covered in sparks, he collapsed and fell out of the power. But not before muttering something. Thanks, you dumb clown bot. After that, the training became increasingly less arduous. There was less pressure. With Super Saiyan 2 now being proved possible, things were a lot more attainable. Bulla was making good progress with reaching high powers herself. Yes, of course, Super Saiyan 2 was not on her radar and wouldn't be for a long time, certainly not today, but she could maybe at least master the Super Saiyan form she already had, even going through the Grade 3 transformation, which, to her, was so weird. She felt incredible, really strong, but her physique was so cumbersome and unwieldy. Honestly, she felt kind of ridiculous and embarrassed. It didn't help that both Kakarot and Raditz were laughing their heads off at her, them having gone through that part early on in their time here. It's not funny! How can I fight like this? I'm not trying to win some bodybuilding contest, I'm trying to save my world! She was getting more and more irate. Raditz tried to regain his composure.
Trust me, the next grade after this is much easier to wield. Would it help if I,
Well, he powered up into Grade 3 himself, him looking equally beefed up and ridiculous. He walked up or waddled up to his daughter and began to pose and flex, trying to get her to lighten up. After a few seconds, Bulla simply just couldn't stay mad at her father. She let out a laugh, and together they heartily guffawed at the surrealness of their all. So, you beefcakes ready for the beach? Raditz and Bulla looked at each other and nodded. Despite their lack of agility, they were strong enough to punch Kakarot down for that jibe with all of this familial love. Bulma and Bulla collectively headed down to the depository. Bulla opened the door and walked over to where the pods were located. She rounded the corner and saw the pod labeled 16. But then, Mama, quick! Bulma rounded the corner as fast as she could, not long afterward, and saw 2 of the pods were gone. Not only that, but chaos had ensued. The wall nearby was utterly devastated, and yet the alarms hadn't gone off. I don't understand. We're 500 feet underground. How can anything get in here without us knowing? Bulma, aping her uncle, said, "Anything's a door if you're strong enough, Mama." Bulma ignored the glib remark and ran over to the opening. She could see a speck of daylight at the top of the shaft. Whatever got in here was so strong and fast that it burrowed a massive hole, broke through a wall which was 2 feet thick, grabbed these two pods specifically, and escaped within the time it took for them to get down here. This was abnormal. Supervillain abnormal. Bulma looked over to the remaining pod, the one marked 16. She had no choice. I hope my reprogramming worked. She gingerly activated the matrix, and the pod whooshed open. Out of it stepped a colossal robotic lifeform. Unlike the other two based on her intel, Android 16 opened his eyes and gazed down at the two women. But that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now.